Hey, my friends, welcome back to Embrace the Question. I feel like it has been a little while since we've last met. We are continuing our journey through Exodus chapter 34. That only leaves us a handful of chapters before we're done with Exodus, and we can say that we have at least an exegetical understanding of the book. If Exodus 34 had a distinguishing mark, I would say it's the renewing of the covenant. You will recognize a lot of what we find here. It last appeared in Exodus chapter 23, and we can actually go back and view that video, Exodus chapter 23, and see all the similarities. However, this is all being renewed because of the anger of Moses in Exodus chapter 33, when he came down the mountain and caught the children of Israel worshiping a golden calf. So as you can imagine, that would put a damper on the covenantal party, so to speak. So let's get into Exodus chapter 34 and see what might be different this time, if anything. Before we do, please visit the blog. Please sign up. I don't know how long that YouTube is going to be a favorable platform for this kind of teaching, so I'm exploring other options, and I would love to stay in touch with you about that. So let's continue. Here we go. All right, Exodus 34, reading from the English Standard Version. Verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, cut for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. I find this incredibly interesting because it seems to me that the Lord is maybe a little miffed that Moses couldn't get beyond his own frustrations and break the stone tablets. Again, I'm only seeing Charlton Heston in my head as he throws down the stone tablets and they shatter on the rocks. Remember, God had created those. He had carved those himself. He had written on them. Wouldn't you love to have just seen the writing, seen the work? What would that have looked like? Now he's telling Moses, glad you're back. Get to work. Carve some new stones yourself since you broke the last set. Well, I wonder if Moses came prepared for that. I wonder if he was carrying hammer chisel with him. These are my questions. Verse 2, be ready by the morning and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai and present yourself there to me on top of the mountain. I will say that it is very difficult work being a prophet of God. Do all of this. You've got, if the Lord gave you a hammer and a chisel and some suitable rock, could you have a couple of stone tablets carved out by in the morning and then plan to climb Mount Sinai carrying your stone tablets? Not easy at all. None of this. Okay, verse 3. No one shall come up with you, and let no one be seen throughout all the mountain. Let no flocks or herds graze opposite that mountain. So Moses cut 2 tablets of stone like the first, and he rose early in the morning and went up on Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand 2 tablets of stone. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord. So we have Moses going up, the Lord coming down. I always like the directional language that we find in these. It's usually very telling. Verse 6, the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children, to the 3rd and 4th generation. We find out later that this may be very, very specific to this covenant because the Lord backs off of this later on. We find that he says, I will no longer hold the children responsible for the sin of the parents. So I do believe that this is very much to set a mood, if you will, for this covenant, this agreement, which is, by the way, in stone. Stone is hard. Stone will cut you. Stone will crush you. These are the pictures that the Apostle Paul gave about what he considered the ministry of death. This particular covenant is not able to save a man. It's only able to weigh him down, so to speak. This was the tutor that prepared all for a better covenant coming. So keep that in mind as we read through some of this stuff that might seem a little harsh. Verse 8, and Moses quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. And he said, if now I have found favor in your sight, O Lord, please let the Lord go in the midst of us. For it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin. Take us for your inheritance. That's quite the ask, because the Lord had said, I will no longer walk in your midst. I will be outside of your camp. He said that last time. Verse 10, and he said, behold, I am making a covenant. Before all your people I will do marvels, such as have not been created in all the earth or in any nation. And all the people among whom you are shall see the work of the Lord. For it is an awesome thing that I will do with you. I would like to bring out that this is a new promise. This is not the kind of thing that was said back in Exodus 23. And it holds some weight because this is a people that has already seen God do more than anybody else that's ever walked the earth. Think about that. No other people group has seen God do works like this really stubborn group of Israelites that he's brought out of Egypt with a very powerful hand. Isn't that interesting? Now he's promising them, I am going to do marvels such as have not been created in all the earth or in any nation. I would be amazed by that statement. I wonder what the Lord has in mind. Verse 11, maybe these are the stipulations then. Observe what I command you this day. Behold, I will drive out before you the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Take care lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land to which you go, lest it become a snare in your midst. This happened. And if we skip ahead to Joshua chapter 9, we discover that the Hivites are going to trick Israel into creating covenant with them. And it's an interesting study because the Lord does not say, oh, well, they deceived you, go ahead and crush them. No, the Lord says, you made a covenant with them, you must keep it. You must, because whether they got you to agree by trickery or not, you did agree, and you are bound to this. Hence the warning here in Exodus 34. Be careful that these guys do not trick you. Be careful that you do not go into covenant with them, because they will become a snare to you, and boy, did they. Boy, did they. All right, it's going to be bad news eventually. Take care lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land to which you go, lest it become a snare in your midst. You shall tear down their altars and break their pillars and cut down their asherim. These are idols and altars, things that are used in idol worship, asherim. Okay? Verse 14, for you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. So the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. He is being very clear to Moses. Lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and when they whore after their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and you are invited, you eat of this sacrifice, and you take of their daughters for your sons, and their daughters whore after their gods, and make your sons whore after their gods. He has just described how Balaam tricks Israel. This is exactly what's going to happen with Balaam. Okay, also known as Balaamism. It's a spiritual form of adultery. And the Lord is being very clear here. Okay, verse 17, you shall not make for yourself any gods cast metal. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. 7 days you shall eat of unleavened bread, as I commanded you, at the time appointed in the month of Abib, for in the month of Abib you came out from Egypt. Okay, so he's now saying, be careful about idolatry. Be sure and keep the high holy days. Keep the Sabbaths. Okay, he's making sure they're setting themselves apart. All right, verse 19. All that open the womb are mine. All your male livestock, the firstborn of cow and sheep. We already went over that because he made this clear right after they came into the desert out of Egypt. The firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. All the firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. All of Israel is the Lord's, but he is basically taxing them only on the firstborn. You're dedicating your firstborn to me. Okay, that's the quote-unquote tax. This is what you owe. This is tied to the temple tax that Jesus paid, that Peter paid. Okay, so these are important things that we see all the way up into the Gospels. 6 days you shall work, but on the seventh day you shall rest. In plowing time and in harvest, you shall rest. It's like, you will take vacation. You will take it. Why is this so difficult for us? And we have trouble with resting even today. Not so much the celebration of a day, that's not what it's about, but just resting. Making sure we aren't trying to get ahead every day of the week. Why do we do this? I'll tell you why. Because he said don't. And it's always our propensity to do exactly the opposite of what we're instructed, which is why the law was so problematic. We just couldn't keep it. Couldn't keep the one command in the garden, right? Don't eat of the tree. Okay. You shall observe the Feast of Weeks, the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at year's end. 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel. Again, this is about the males. This next part is pretty important. I have not seen this before. For I will cast out nations before you and enlarge your borders. No one shall covet your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God 3 times in the year. That I have not seen. I've read it, but I haven't caught it. When you're doing what I'm asking you to do, which is send all your males into Jerusalem, send all your males to the feast, I will supernaturally protect your lands, your homes that are now unguarded, all of your tribal inheritance. I will protect it supernaturally from invasion of marauders. No one will want your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God 3 times in the year. Wow, what a promise. I will also say that all of these, as attractive as they are inferior promises to what we get in the current covenant. So if you see something that just makes you say, wow, if only I had that now, you and I need to search deeper and find out what we do have now, because it's better. That's the beauty of all of this, is that as wonderful as these things seem, what we have now is better. So sometimes it's just my people perish for lack of knowledge that's going on. So 3 times a year, the males are leaving their homes. They're going up. They're going to worship for 3 high holy days: Feast of Weeks, Feast of Ingathering, and First Fruits, not in that order. Verse 25, you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, or let the sacrifice of the feast of Passover remain until the morning. That's the old Passover rule. The best of the first fruits of your ground you shall bring in to the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. And again, we see this weird, out of place thing that makes no sense to our Western mind, probably not even to the Eastern mind anymore. What is it about? Well, it was a pagan practice associated with the nations of that day. The nations of that day would literally, on purpose, take a kid goat and boil it in its mother's milk, and then sprinkle this stew on their fields and on their plants and on anything they wanted to grow. And they would do this superstitiously as a way to bring in the harvest, as a way to bless their harvest, their first fruits. It was associated with first fruits for the surrounding nations. And God is saying, don't practice this witchcraft. Do not do what the other nations do. He's associating this practice specifically with first fruits. Okay. And the Lord said to Moses, write these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. So he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. Again, he neither ate bread nor drank water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. I guess it would take a while to chisel this stuff. He got the tablets chiseled out in a day. But this is not a typewriter. It's going to take some time. I don't know that it took 40 days to do it, but wow. Wow, it was just an ordeal, it seems like. Verse 29. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, as he came down from the mountain, Moses did not know that the skin on his face shone, because he had been talking with God. Aaron and all the people of Israel saw Moses, and behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him. They had run off. And Moses talked with them. Afterward, all the people of Israel came near, and he commanded them all that the Lord had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. So he's radiating. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. Whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would remove the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the people of Israel what he was commanded, the people of Israel would see the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face was shining, and Moses would put the veil over his face again until he went in to speak with him, the Lord. All right, that's the end of this chapter, I believe, yes. So this is a radiating of the glory of this covenant, the glory of the law. Paul has much to say about the glory of the law and how it is a fading glory. It's a pretty interesting study, because there is another glory that's greater than the glory of the law, and that's the glory that is within this new covenant in Christ. The glory of this new mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. So I find all of this very relevant. It's very relevant because everything is a picture. We are not to get hung up with the do's and don'ts of this particular covenant. We can read that in Colossians chapter 2. Paul's talking, once again, he's trying to explain all this, and he says that these are the elemental spirits of the world. And then if you scroll down in Colossians chapter 2, he describes exactly what the elemental spirits of the world are. He says, these are things that you do not touch, do not taste, do not handle. Things that you cannot do. If you died with Christ, then you are no longer under these particular rules anymore. And we also get a very strong hint of this in Hebrews chapter 12, where the writer of Hebrews is saying, at one time, you came to Mount Sinai, a place where you dare not touch, a place where your animals would be stoned or speared through if they came in contact with the mountain. But now you are in a place that you cannot see, the holy Mount Zion, the new Jerusalem, a superior place. Hebrews 12. Well, that is Exodus chapter 34, a long chapter, but one chock full of things to think about. I hope you enjoyed that. I did. It's been a while since I've been back into Exodus, but every time I do, I am forced to follow up with these ideas that Paul explains in Colossians, in Hebrews, all of this. And it ends up being really clarifying, I think is the word for me. It helps me really get a grasp of the importance of what Jesus did. Please visit www.solwaycoffee.com, SOLWAY coffee.com, and order some coffee to support a kingdom cause, and that also blesses this channel. And I appreciate all that you do. Share this with someone looking for a Bible study. And until next time, peace.